Hey guys, welcome back to Maury's Music. My name is Maury Rutch.
And I'm Spoon Phillips.
And we have a lot to talk about on the program we like to call Martins and More. And we've given you weeks and weeks and weeks of Martins. It's time we bring you more. Spoon, is today a good day to talk about Blueridge Guitars?
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this for some time now.
We are doing this the right way. For today's podcast, Spoon is in China. We're piping his signal into San Francisco via satellite and routing that back to Coaldale, Pennsylvania, just like the Blueridge Guitars. Spoon, I bet you didn't know that Blueridge Guitars are not made in Nazareth.
Ni hao, everybody. I was aware of that fact. For the record, I am not in China. I'm in Brooklyn, though we have some wonderful heavily Chinese neighborhoods and restaurants. But that's as close as I get.
That's entirely my fault. I'm thinking about one of my favorite songs, Chinatown from Spoon Phillips. My mind just goes to that sometimes, so please forgive me.
Oh, that's really nice of you to say. I get a lot of compliments on that particular song. But yes, Blueridge Guitars, they're made in China. They have been very popular for a very long time now. I think when people do their research trying to find a high-quality acoustic guitar that is a serious bargain compared to other major brands, Blueridge comes up all the time. Good, very good reason.
And before people ask me the question, I'll answer it right now. Blueridge Guitars absolutely are the best value we could find. Back when we signed up with them a long, long time ago, we watched the forums, we took the pulse of what a lot of people are talking about on the internet, and names like Recording King, Eastman. There are a lot of guitars you can look at in the quote-unquote sub-$1,000 category, and that's just painting with a broad brush. But all the while that we've been carrying Blueridge Guitars from the beginning and consistently throughout all the time we've had them, we are still looking for that brand that catches the public's attention just as much or better and holds up to the reputation. And we still can't find a better guitar to offer you at these price points. And we're trying all the time. It's not fair for us to just rest on our laurels, carry Martin, carry Blueridge, and just stop thinking. We honestly still do feel in 2022, without doubt, that the Blueridge guitar is the way to go.
Yeah, they definitely have a lot going for them. I want to say right up front that Blueridge guitars come in a gig bag that's got to be one of the most attractive and practically good gig bags out there. And I think if Blueridge would allow dealers to just sell those high-end gig bags alone, to customers, they would probably sell loads and loads and loads of them because I just think they look cool, they feel great, and you can tell, they do their job very, very well.
There's no secret most of the Blueridge designs are heavily inspired by Martin, if not deliberately trying to copy what's going on. And that doesn't mean that in the past Blueridge hasn't aimed at some Gibson styles, but for the most part, when you look at a Blueridge guitar on maurysmusic.com, there's a very, very good chance that it's inspired by a Martin design, whether it's a Dreadnought, a Triple O, OM, or even a parlor guitar. And Spoon, you'll be able to echo this sentiment, but there are basically three ways to get the Blueridge design. You can get the Contemporary series, which is laminated back and sides. You can get the Historic series that steps up to solid back and sides, or the Pre-War series that's solid back and sides and an Adirondack top. And both the Contemporary series and Historic series feature a solid Sitka top. Where do you want to start?
Well, an overview of them, you just pointed out how they're inspired by Martins, but then basically every acoustic guitar with steel strings in the modern world was inspired by the designs that Martin had come up with at one time or another. So I'd say let's start with the Contemporary series, because one of the cool things about the Contemporary series with the laminated back and sides is the prices are all exceptionally good. The quality, the build and the finish and all that is always very good. And you can get what is the best 4-string tenor guitar on the market in this price range. I don't think anybody offers a tenor guitar in this price range that comes close to the BR40T is the Contemporary series tenor guitar. For people who don't know, tenor guitars were made for tenor banjo players originally back in the Depression era when Martin wanted to offer when they knew that banjoists were changing over to acoustic guitars, when they got steel strings, they offered tenor guitars that these Blue Ridges are inspired by.
Let's not gloss over the important things about these names. You said BR40T, and it's important to note that BR is going to stand for Blue Ridge. Everything on today's program will begin with the BR. There are some guitars in the past Blue Ridge catalog that would have started with BG, but just for now, that's not going to be in today's conversation. So BR means Blue Ridge, 40 means laminated mahogany back and sides, and T means tenor. And 40 isn't just important because it's 40, it's important because it's only 2 digits. And Spoon, can you help explain why 2 digits is different than 3 when you're looking at the Blue Ridge catalog across the board?
Yes, that's a very good point. It's a quick way to realize you are in the contemporary series. So the contemporary series is what I would call Martin design from before Martin's reimagined series. So you get like a black pickguard, you get dot fingerboard, and so forth. So that's the contemporary series. It is the most affordable Blue Ridge guitars that you can get.
Other offerings in the contemporary series and tenors also include a BR60T and a BR70T, and they both follow suit. They're still tenor guitars. 60 means laminated rosewood back and sides, and 70 means laminated rosewood back and sides with pearl.
Yes, very good. So 40, best bang for the buck. You go up to the 60s, like Maury just said, with the rosewood, and then you get the fanciest trim up in the 70s. And so there's some overlap. The contemporary series models that have the highest prices overlap with the historic series guitars price-wise. The most affordable historic series and the most expensive contemporary series are basically in the same price range. So you really want to look at the specs and see for yourself when you're comparing guitars that have similar prices from Blue Ridge.
That's a good point. You might want to put your money towards solid back and sides or choose to spend it on pearl trim. And that does give you the option both ways. And it's a good part of the podcast to let you guys know, anyone out there that really has a hard time with the wide neck, a lot of Martins and Blue Ridge have 1 3/4 inch at the nut. Some of them have 1 11/16. These tenor guitars are 1 9/32.
That's right. Only 4 strings. You don't need that wide a neck. An old friend of mine who is a musicologist and was a journalist who was published many times in all the major guitar magazines, has a Blue Ridge tenor that she absolutely loves and serenades us on her social media accounts regularly with that guitar. But so very cool that you can get the tenor affordable. You can get it with rosewood back and sides. That you can. It goes like Maury said. It goes up the scale of construction. Now, I think for me, one of the sweet spots for me is the historic series. These are the ones that are more like Martin 1930s guitars in certain respects. These are the ones that are instantly recognizable by the leopard pattern. I don't know if that's what they call it, but a leopard pattern pickguard that you'll see on some rare Martins here and there, particularly the one that the late Tony Rice owned, and that was owned by Clarence White before him. That's basically what those pickguards were inspired by. And you're going to have that total traditional bracing, forward-shifted scallop bracing. And here again, even though it's now a 140 instead of a 40, the 4 is mahogany back and sides, but now we're up into solid mahogany back and sides. And then you get the dark binding and the black and white ply, similar to Martin's style 18. Solid Sitka spruce top, always really good tops. It has a sort of vintage toner look to the top. It offers that slim that Maury was just talking about, that slim 1 11/16 inch neck. So that's a really nice. It's got the rosewood fingerboard and bridge. So again, it's similar to the Martin 18s that were around in the 1990s and all going back to the 1940s that had rosewood for the board and bridge. And they have nickel-plated tuners. I think it's a really good option for people who want to add a mahogany guitar to their arsenal. that maybe as a second guitar or as a guitar that they can take on the road and not put their, vintage Martin at risk, or something like that. There's many reasons to own Blue Ridge. Either it's the best guitar you can afford, or it's the best second guitar that you, when you're looking for something that maybe is a body size that you don't normally play, but you want to have one. One of my big favorite parts of the whole historic series is the cutaways. You can get a auditorium size body with a cutaway, but still get the same historic series look. So that's very appealing to me.
And if you're going that route, those guitars are going to end with a CE. One example might be BR 163 CE. 163 means solid rosewood back and sides, and CE cutaway electric. And if you want to go even further than that, while we're still in overview mode, going higher than the historic series takes you into pre-war Blue Ridge guitars that begin with the prefix 2. And again, one quick caveat, in today's conversation, we're only talking about current models in 2022. There are some new old stock or older model Blue Ridge guitars from before 2021 that might kind of fly in the face of our reasoning and the rules we're going to lay down as far as how guitars are named, what their names mean. That only really does apply to current production models, and we're taping this show in the summer of 2022. So get your keyboard ready. If you hear us say something about a BR-243 and it's not true, you probably have a BR-243 from 3 years ago. So settle down. Don't come at us with the pitchforks. We're going to make lots of mistakes, but not about the names. And one of my favorite guitars that we've had here was a BR-240. It's a pre-war version of the 140, which is the Blue Ridge version of a D18, but in the pre-war series, the 240 actually has an Adirondack top, making it more similar to what used to be called the Martin D18 GE. Raise your hand if you're getting confused.
Well, before we get too farther along, I want to step back now to confuse them even more. Go back to the historic series. One of the things I wanted to mention, a guitar that you cannot get in the contemporary series in terms of design that you can get in the historic series is found in the BR-341, which is a 12-fret slot head parlor guitar. And this is a contemporary 12-fret, but very throwback, with a straight bridge, and instead of the belly bridge, slotted headstock. The body size, I think if Maury has measured this, it's between a 12 fret O and a 12 fret double O when you're talking Martins, but it's closer to an O. And it's got a 1 7/8 inch width at the nut, but it's long scale. And the body shape is more of that sort of peanut shape to it, similar to the smaller body Martins that were made like in size 2.5 and size 1. So really cool option for people that have wanted to add a small, comfortable 12 fret body to their collection without spending a lot of money. And some of you may already know the 12 fret body with that extra long sound chamber, they sound bassier and louder than a 14 fret guitar built in the same size. So for people on the lookout for a nice, comfortable slot head, this may be the guitar for you.
Absolutely. And we talked about the fact that a 2-digit prefix means laminated back and sides. A 3-digit prefix beginning with 1 is the historic series with solid back and sides. And the pre-war series is the 3-digit number that begins with a 2 for a 280, which is in the pre-war series with an Adirondack top. I just want to quickly say that the BR-341, BR-361, and BR-371, the 3 means parlor, and they are solid back and sides. I'm going to ask you, Spoon, this is an easy way to get spun around. Would you rather take one specific model like a BR-160 and talk about its variations going pre-war, historic, contemporary, or should we take one series and walk through the bare bones beginning through all the models? What's easier for you?
Yes.
We'll be back after these messages. What are you talking about? All right, so we just had a really productive meeting with our producer, and we need to make a little bit more of an effort to not confuse you people. Thank you very much for listening this far. Please don't go anywhere. We're going to try to circle the wagons and make some sense of these series. We still have not properly given you an overview of the pre-war series. The pre-war guitars from Blue Ridge that begin with the 2 give you a solid Adirondack top, ebony fingerboard and bridge, solid premium tone woods on the back and sides like premium mahogany and premium rosewood, and it's the only way to get into the Blue Ridge guitars with a 1 3/4 inch nut width. So when you're looking at these series, contemporary at the bottom, historic in the middle, and pre-war at the top, if you want an Adirondack top or 1 3/4, the pre-war series is the only way to go. And I think now that we've kind of laid out the groundwork, why don't we take an opportunity, Spoon, and go look at one model in the contemporary series, and then we can discuss exactly what you're getting when you graduate from contemporary to historic, and then graduate from historic to pre-war in the same exact trim. Can we begin with the BR40?
I think that's the perfect place to start.
So what can you tell us about the contemporary series Blue Ridge BR40 Dreadnought?
Okay, so BR40 Dreadnought. So solid Sitka spruce top, good quality. It has mahogany back and sides. That's laminated mahogany, and the neck is made of mahogany. And just like you get in at Martin, the neck is finished by hand. So the shaping, final shaping and sanding, and all that's done by hand. You have a rosewood fingerboard with actual genuine mother of pearl dot position markers like vintage Martins. That means that it's a white marker, but it's actual mother of pearl, so it reflects pink and blues, when the light hits it. So that's very cool. So you're getting the traditional Martin style Dreadnought body. The scale lengths on these guys, when they call them long scale guitars, they're actually a tiny bit longer than Martins. Martins are 25.4 and Blue Ridges are 25.6. And that's because, of course, they're actually metric and they're 650 millimeter string scale. And so plenty of power, plenty of projection. The purfling on the top is similar to the traditional Martin black and white 5-ply. Basically black, white, black, and similar to what I would now call old style 18. They're black binding, black pickguard, and 1 11/16 inch neck, bone nut, and nickel plated tuners, and a natural high gloss finish. That's what they call it. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but that's what they call it. And it comes with their standard gig bag, which is almost I don't know if they call it a gold or it's more gold than tan, but it looks like tanned leather to me, though of course it's not actually made of leather. And but it's and padded gig bag. It's a lot of guitar for the money for a mahogany laminated Dreadnought.
Well said. And I just thought of something I should have mentioned maybe 30 minutes ago. When you look at these guitars across the board, contemporary versus historic versus pre-war, the contemporary series finish is a very neutral blonde. When you do go up to the historic series and to the pre-war series, you get more into that pumpkin orange vintage toner. So I don't want to forget to make mention of that. Looking at a BR40 is the way to go if you want that blonde look, because when you graduate away from this series, the tops do look darker.
Yes, that's correct. And they're similar to the finish that was used on Martin's vintage series and the Eric Clapton models back when they first came out in the 90s and the early 2000s. Martin has since gone with less obvious vintage toners in these days. But they look basically, I've seen a zillion pre-war Martins that look exactly like this kind of finish. So they do a good job with making it look like a pre-war guitar.
So if I'm a shopper and I want to look at a BR40 style guitar, but I'm set on getting solid mahogany back and sides, I've got to go to what they call the BR140. So I just mentioned a moment ago, the BR140 is going to give you a darker looking top. You're still going to have the 1 11/16. It's important to note all of these guitars have forward shifted bracing. So when you go from the 40 to the 140, those things don't change, but you do get the added benefit of solid mahogany back and sides in the BR140. And the headstocks look a little bit different too. Every time I open my mouth about these Blueridge guitars, I forget one more thing to mention. I'm so afraid, instead of hitting it all at the very beginning of the show, there are going to be little nuggets we're going to drop at you guys that sort of reveal the differences between guitars. The contemporary series and the historic series do have slightly different headstocks as well.
Yes, the design on the headstocks has changed over the years. So Blueridge has gone through various aesthetics. They look similar, but as you go up, you get I don't know if I would call it a more impressive headstock design, but it's certainly, that's, I think, a matter of opinion. But just like in Martin's, as you go up into the Pearl models, you're getting a much fancier headstock. So, and just if you just go on Maury's Music and look at the different models, you can compare those different headstocks designs on the faceplates. But what's really nice about this series, when you get up to the 140, is you get a higher quality mahogany neck as well. So they call it a choice mahogany neck. I'm sorry, they call it a select mahogany neck. The back and sides are choice mahogany back and sides. And so you're getting solid mahogany neck, solid mahogany back and sides, a good quality Sitka spruce top with the forward shifted scallop bracing. So all solid wood, solid rosewood fretboard and bridge, and that leopard tortoise pickguard. So very attractive and great sounding. Still got your 1/11/16 inch neck. Again, you can, we're talking about the Dreadnought right now, but when you get into the what they call the triple O size, which is still a long scale neck, you can also get the cutaway model. So, but you still get that vintage look, and that's something that Martin just doesn't offer very often. So just one more reason to look at this historic series. So that's the solid mahogany Dreadnought in the historic series.
And if you're keeping score at home, this is the guitar that's very, very closely related to a Martin D18. The previous mentioned BR40 would be the laminated back and sides version, which Martin really doesn't offer. But going apples to apples, if you're looking at a Martin D18, what you want to compare in the Blueridge series is the Blueridge BR140.
That's correct. But if you really want to go even more vintage and you really want that Adirondack spruce top, then you have to go up to the BR240.
You're correct. That's where you get the Adirondack spruce top, choice solid mahogany back and sides, and you don't give up anything as far as bracing or neck feel, but you do get a 1 3/4 inch nut.
You also get the tortoise binding instead of the black binding, so that's another improvement in some people's eyes as you go up. Still have nickel-plated tuners. You have to get into the rosewood models to get the gold-plated tuners, but very good quality, really kick the barn doors off, punchy Adirondack mahogany voice for those bluegrass pickers out there.
And sadly, Martin doesn't offer anything right now in the catalog to be an apples-to-apples comparison. But if you're looking at the used market, the old Martin D18 GE would have been fairly similar, except for the fact that the D18 GE had a V-neck, and there are other slight differences. But that's basically what Sog is going for in the BR240. Let's pause for a moment and listen to a sound sample of a Blueridge guitar. This is the BR240.
It was very difficult to find Martins that didn't have a V-neck, that had Adirondack spruce tops. And so maybe this would be a good time for you to talk about your impressions of the Blueridge neck. because you certainly have them in your hands much more often than I do.
I do want to say that the Blue Ridge necks in general, and I'll make a little asterisk here, not the 341, 371, or 361, but every other Blue Ridge that we carry, the neck is fairly slim. I call it the shoulders, Spoon calls it the cheeks, but if you picture the guitar neck in your hand, the edges under the E strings of the neck, that part of the neck carve are a little bit thinner. The entire neck in general has less mass than a lot of similar Martin necks, and the frets are a lot taller. I was just talking to a friend of mine at a gig last week. He bought a BR-160 from us a long time ago, and he went to get the frets replaced. And someone that you and I know, Spoon, laughed, and he said, you can have these frets faced 5 more times before you get down to where Martin frets start. So if you like the Blue Ridge feel, that means you like a feel of a taller fret wire. You can basically take these frets and face them down 3, 4, 5 times, and at that 5th facing, now you're at the height of a Martin fret wire. So it is a different feel. It's not fair to say that if somebody likes the neck on a Martin 00028, you'll automatically like the neck on the Blue Ridge similar. They are different feels. So where Blue Ridge makes a very, very good attempt to sound like a Martin guitar, they do not feel like Martin guitars. Not for better or worse, but the feel of a Blue Ridge neck is taller frets and a skinnier profile.
Yeah, I think some people consider them more comfortable than Martin necks. Other people, maybe people with very large hands, might feel they're too easy play, as it were. And the taller frets means that you can press down on the strings harder without contacting the fretboard. So I think some people do like that. They're not jumbo frets by any stretch of the imagination, but they are definitely taller.
If you're looking at the Martin guitars, but you do want a narrow nut width, a lot of the Blue Ridge guitars in the historic series really might be the way to go, because you can't find, for example, a D18 with 1 11/16 anymore. So it's not just about budget. Blue Ridge might be the way to go if you like the feel of a thinner neck. Well, that's more than enough talk about mahogany. Let's talk about the rosewood guitars. Let's go to the BR60, which is the better version of a BR40. The BR60 has rosewood back and sides. Spoon, have you played any of them?
Yes, I have. I'm a mahogany fan, even though Maury jokes about this stuff. I do like the rosewood. I have to say, I do like the rosewood Blue Ridges better than the mahogany. I think the Blue Ridge sound, I would say, compared to the Martin, it's brighter and a little more vibrant, and isn't as dark and woofy in that undertone that I, talk about under the low mids and stuff like that. So rosewood definitely helps warm up that sound. And the BR60 is a laminated back and sides of rosewood. It certainly looks great. It has the same build and the same neck shape and all that. But now you're getting into interesting fret markers. In the BR60, you have the black and white top purfling, but you have white binding instead of black binding. But if you go up into the BR70, that's where you get into the abalone pearl. And that's where you get into the really interesting abalone, sort of outline abalone hexagon markers. So that's a unique look that's different than a typical Martin pearl look, but still in a laminated guitar. So down here in the contemporary series, you get nice looking rosewood veneer with a laminated veneer back and sides. And you can either get that sort of classic traditional style 28 look, dot fret markers and white binding, or you can go up into those into the nice abalone of the BR70. Pretty cool.
Well said. And the BR60 really does punch way above its weight. We've done a couple of videos about that guitar. That guitar has been the subject of Mystery Guitar Podcast from time to time. And I really think, I'm not sure why, but the laminated rosewood back and sides Blue Ridge guitars do not sound laminated to me. There's a lot of blind tests I've done, and not speaking badly of mahogany or making that joke, even longer. I think the laminated rosewood guitars from Blue Ridge really, really do sound very resonant.
Yes, no, I totally agree. I think they have their voice is Martin-like, but they still have their own thing going on. They have a very fast, articulate tone to them. So I can totally see why flat pickers like them. I can see why they named them Blue Ridge, because they definitely have what I hear in my head as a bluegrass kind of sound. So, and again, the price is really hard to beat for what you get with a BR60. Now, if you want the solid wood, if you want solid rosewood back and sides, then you go up from a BR60 to a BR160, and it brings you into the historic series. Maury had pointed out that the contemporary series version, the BR60 and the BR70, do not have the vintage toner, so you're getting more the natural look of the Sitka spruce top. But when you get into the 160, now you're getting into that vintage toner. Now you're getting into a look that is more like the modern day Martin Standard Series 28, but you still get Sitka spruce and forward shifted bracing. You also get a little fancier fret markers. They are like the Martin Diamonds and Squares, but they're a little fancier, and you'll get a much fancier headstock design. That is a torch design that's unique to Blueridge, and it really reminds me of some of those very ornate banjo headstocks from around 1900, before and after 1900. So it's definitely it's unique to Blueridge, but it is still reminiscent of pre-war era instruments. Very nice looking instruments.
Wait, did you say BR160?
BR160.
Bestseller alert. I have to tell you guys listening, that has to be one of the biggest bestsellers across the board, not even just in Blueridge Guitars, but when you count all the guitars we sell every year, the BR160 is, I'm going to tell you, it's in the top 10. That guitar just has everything going for it. Back when we became a dealer in 2003, we got in with Blueridge very early, and from the early 2000s up until now, we just sold the BR160 to a fine gentleman on the phone on Friday. He's going to have a trance audio amulet installed, and that's what I'm doing on the weekend here between podcasts. That guitar, it's just so resonant. The price is so perfect. Getting a solid top, solid back and sides in the D28, HD28 voice, whether you put a pickup in it or not. The BR160. We don't have any awards here on this show, but if we did, Spoon, we got to set one aside for the BR160 because it's just awesome.
Yeah, and again, for the price, how do you beat that? And I liked what you just said. He's having the amulet pickup put in it. If what you're really looking for out there is a stage guitar, then you're going to be plugging in primarily. Blueridge is actually a great way to go. Those comfortable necks, and for a lot of guitar for the money. Now, if you really want to fancy it up, in the contemporary series, you go from a 60-something to a 70-something for the Pearl. In the historic series, you go from a 160 to a 180. And the 180 is premium Sitka spruce top. So it's higher grade Sitka spruce top, solid premium rosewood. It's their best rosewood. You're getting a select mahogany one-piece neck. You're getting that absolute solid entire solid one-piece mahogany neck. And you're getting an ebony fingerboard and bridge instead of rosewood. So 160 has rosewood fingerboard and bridge, so it's really more like a D21 would have been back when they were making D21s. But to get a ebony fingerboard and bridge, you have to move up to the pearl trim BR180, and you get it still comes with white binding, but it has a bound neck and albalone purfling, basically their version of a pearl trimmed Martin. So the BR180 gives you the pearl trim of a Martin D45. So we're skipping the 41 and the 42. We're going to abalone inlay around the back sides and top, as well as the ornate bound neck and inlays and the ornate Blueridge headstock torch artwork inlaid on the faceplate.
That's right. And those of you guys that are smart shoppers, you could either buy a D45 or 8 Blueridge BR180s.
Well, there you go. And we're still talking about solid premium rosewood and solid premium Sitka forward shifted scallop bracing. 1 and 11/16 inch nut that you don't get from Martin anymore when you're talking about these kind of guitars. And gold plated hardware. Now we're getting up into the gold plated tuners. and you get a higher grade, and this is where you get into the really nice gig bags. Their Pro Tour Deluxe Gig Bag is it's got thicker padding than you get in the Contemporary series, and it's a they have a word for it. I forget. It might be rustic, but again, looks like a leather bag. It's not actually leather, but it certainly looks like it. And I think they're just gorgeous. So there we have the historic series. Again, just remind people, you get the vintage tone or look. You're getting all solid rosewood. It really is the same materials, the same kind of bracing that you get on a Martin D45 for almost unbelievably lower price. So it's definitely something to think about if you love the look of abalone inlay all over the body.
It's so ornate that the abalone inlay is inlaid with abalone inlay.
Yes, and some people may recognize that was my very bad Jonathan Winters impersonation. They all over the body. Anyway,
is that what that was supposed to be?
Quiet, you.
Is it time for a trivia question?
Sure, let's do a trivia question.
So you have in the Contemporary series, BR40, BR60, BR70. In the Historic series, you have BR140, BR160, BR170. Wait, no, BR180. Why is the 7 in the model name in the Contemporary series, but when you graduate to the Historic series and the Pre-War series, the 7s become 8s? If you're watching this on YouTube, let us know in the comments. If you're listening at home, know where to put the answer, but just think about that.
So, back to our climb up the Blue Ridge Mountain. So, BR60, rosewood, laminate, Dreadnought. We're talking traditional 14 fret, non-cutaway Dreadnought. BR160, solid rosewood. BR180, premium solid rosewood, and pearl trim, very similar to a Martin D45. Then we get up to the BR260, which I believe by now our listeners know that 2 means it's anybody? Pre-war series Adirondack spruce top. Premium Adirondack spruce soundboard. Forward shifted scallop bracing. Solid premium rosewood back and sides. Solid select. One-piece mahogany neck. You got ebony fingerboard and bridge. You have something similar to the vintage style 28 diamonds and squares markers that Martin would call them, but a little bit fancier. You get a couple of extra markers in there that are closer to what you get in the 40s in Martin. And whether you're getting the Dreadnought, the 260, or the Triple O, the 263, or 243, which is we're back into the mahogany, you're still talking about a truly long scale 25.6 neck. But these guitars have a 1 3/4 inch nut width. So now you're getting closer to modern day Martins. But again, you can't get Adirondack spruce from Martin on their tops with a modern easy play neck. You now you have to really look into V-necks if you want to get a Martin with a premium Adirondack spruce top.
That's true, and that brings me to my next question for you. We agreed that if you're looking at a BR180, you can look at a D45 from Martin as an apples to apples equivalent. What does Martin offer in the current lineup, if anything, where you can find D45 styling and a solid Adirondack spruce top?
Well, there is the D28 authentic, beg your pardon, there's the D45 authentic 1936 that costs something along the lines of $60,000. So, other than, of course, custom shop, you could call Maury and say, I want a D45 with an Adirondack spruce top. And I can tell you, it's not going to get you nearly the guitar for the dollar that you get from buying a Blue Ridge. At the top of Blue Ridge, his ceiling is still ridiculously affordable acoustic guitar.
And I can already hear what we sound like. We don't mean to sound that funny. We're making little jokes about the prices. We are not in any respect saying that Martins are overpriced or that Blueridge guitars are better. It's just a fact that Blueridge guitars are very affordable. But make no mistake, Martin guitars are the real thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think if anybody knows me, they know how much I love Martin guitars. And sometimes people, I've said this before, are looking for something different, but still in the same sort of ballpark in terms of style of guitar. Somebody's looking for a guitar. They like a Pearl, but they can't afford a D45. And I got to tell you, the Blueridge 280 is one gorgeous guitar. But with the Style 45 Pearl, they don't call it that, but that's what it is. The pre-war Style 45 snowflake neck, that in some respects are the way they put in the diamonds and the snowflakes is even fancier than what you'd get from a vintage-looking D42 or D45, much more along the lines of some limited edition Martins. Really gorgeous vintage style gold tuners and a very unique headstock inlay that is a combination of mother of pearl and abalone. It might even be green power shell because it is like green leaves and a white leaves. It's hard to describe. You have to check it out for yourself. I think it looks absolutely gorgeous. And so people who want a very very pearly, beautiful abalone guitar, but cannot justify going up to the price of a D45. I don't think there's another guitar on the planet that deserves a look more than the Blueridge 280. Blueridge, the non-pearl one that's more similar to Style 28, same thing. Really great bang for the buck when you want an Adirondack spruce top and solid rosewood. So, there's no apologies need to be made for Martin or Blueridge here. And I think they are definitely big sellers for you for good reason. I mean, obviously.
Absolutely, and we're really proud to rep for both of these brands. And jokes aside, there's a guitar for you from both of these companies. So if you really like the styling of something from Martin, there's a very, very good chance Blueridge makes something equally as nice, and vice versa. You might end up, starting with the BR160, and it's just going to make you want a Martin D28 that much more. So we're not trying to divide anybody. We're not going down the politics and trying to land on one side of this. We want to bring you as much information. I mean, if anything, we've done 10 episodes of Martin. This is the first episode of more, so we certainly aren't favoring Blueridge as far as the number of podcasts we're doing. But it can't be ignored. Blueridge guitars are just so good. As I started saying earlier in the podcast, we could have switched to Eastman, Recording King, if we found a good reason, and we just have not. And I'll tell you the truth, we're constantly looking at the NAMM shows and other things online. Maybe it's time to bring a third brand in here. Let them fight it out. If we began selling Martin and Blueridge and something else, and the sales of that third thing really cannibalize the Blueridge lineup, you guys will be speaking with your wallets, and we want to give you what you want. So far to date, what you want is Blueridge as an alternative. I mean, I've got my favorite Blueridge guitars that I always go to when I'm playing here. I do so many virtual tours on Wednesdays where we show you our current inventory of both brands, and we even did a couple of really good demo videos a month ago where we compared some Blueridge guitars with laminated back and sides to the same kind of guitar with solid back and sides. And I'm getting a lot of really great mail after the fact and YouTube comments and emails later gushing over what these guitars sound like in the Contemporary series. So Spoon made a good point a minute ago. Some people can't afford a Martin. A lot of people could afford a Martin, but don't choose to allocate their money towards a really expensive guitar. A lot of people who buy Blueridge, if they wanted to buy an HD28, they have plenty of money for it. They just choose not to do it. And the more we listen to up-close examples of what these Blueridge guitars sound like, I'm just really impressed.
Well, and something else that I forgot to mention, I wanted to mention early on, is these are good options for new guitarists who want a really good guitar. And especially as a gift, like someone wanting to buy their son or daughter their first solid wood guitar, and that have learned to play and are very into it, but it's not really time to move up to Martin money. They can do that themselves when they get older and can afford a Martin if they want, but they might just stay with that Blueridge, and it could be their guitar for life because they're well made. And whether you're talking about the laminated contemporary series or the full-blown solid wood Blueridges. So that's another reason for people to look to Blueridge.
So as I'm watering the plants today by the pool in the summer of 2022, I thought, what a gorgeous, beautiful blue sky day to lock myself in the Maury's Music basement studio and get on a podcast. We're almost out of time. Not quite yet. We do have two things to do. I haven't answered the trivia question yet, and I think we should have a fun rapid-fire part of this show. Spoon, I challenge you, name a Blueridge guitar so I could quickly, precisely, and handsomely name the Martin guitar that it's inspired by. Go.
Sure. BR163.
Martin OM28.
So that is correct. And the interesting thing is some people might have said 0028 because Blueridge refers to these guitars as O's. But why is Maury correct for equating this to the Martin OM28? Maury?
Because it is long scale.
That's correct. Very good. It's a long, a long scale.
I'll never, ever understand how quietly this crowd sits and hangs on every little word, and they only really erupt when somebody gets an answer right. They're so behaved. Same people, too, every week.
Well, just keep that cattle prod charged and you'll be fine. All right, here's another. BR143CE.
There is no Martin counterpart for an all-solid mahogany back and sides, solid Sitka spruce top, cutaway OM in the catalog right now. The closest thing would be an OM18 cutaway electronic, which only exists in Spoon's dreams.
That's exactly right. Or a custom order from Maury's Music. But yes.
Good point. Hit me again.
All right. BR70.
You tried to trap me. If that was a BR180, we would say D45, but the laminated version of the BR180 is the BR70, and there does not exist anything in the Martin lineup except for contacting Andrew at Maury's Music for your next custom.
There comes the trivia question again. Why is that BR70 instead of BR80 or vice versa?
And the answer is... we don't know. If you're listening, Blueridge, please contact us and give us the answer. I'm not kidding. I don't know why Blueridge would do the 7 prefix, and then when you graduate to the solid wood version, it became an 8. It should be either a BR80 below a BR180, or it should be a BR70 and then a BR170. If you work for Saga Music and you're listening to this program, please let us know ASAP. Unless you know, Spoon.
Nope, no, I got to say, I have never known that. Here I thought I was finally going to learn the answer. Exactly.
Well, that's why we like to call it Martins and More. If you'd like more of this kind of content, please share this with your friends. Please do come back next week. I thought I heard our Academy Awards wrap up your speech music in the distance, but there's one more thing I'd like to hit on before we get out of here. We talked about, in general, the contemporary series versus the historic series versus pre-war series. We have taken the time to teach you that a 43 is a 2-prefix guitar in the contemporary. The 143 is the solid back and sides version in historic series, and then you graduate all the way up to the pre-war series for a BR243. We have failed to mention, and it's all my fault, mostly Spoon's, when you look at the Blueridge nomenclature, the end of the name, if it ends in a 0, it is a Dreadnought, and if it ends in a 3, it is an auditorium-sized guitar. Spoon, can you forgive me?
Well, yes and no, because I guess I'm so used to this now, I forgot to say that myself. So I think we're even. Stephen?
All right, Stephen, I do hear the music now. It's about time for us to go. Spoon, I want to thank you for the great conversation. It's always fun. From all of us at Maury's Music, thank you for listening.
Hear you later.
This has been a presentation of Maury's Music, your trusted source for Martin and Blueridge guitars. Find us online at maurysmusic.com.